Hello everyone, just like to give a very warm welcome to Mark Ward today. We're going to be talking to Mark about his life as a TD, the fact that Mark is his party's spokesperson for mental health, and the fact that Mark lives with multiple sclerosis. I wouldn't even have been aware, and I'm sure most people aren't aware, that you live with multiple sclerosis. And I suppose maybe for people that don't know anything about it, I'm just wondering, would you mind sharing a little bit about what MS is and how it can affect someone, if that's okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And you know what, I worked with you and you wouldn't have been aware, because it was something that I didn't felt the need to tell people, because I had it, and I still have it under a modicum of control, I'd say, for want of a better word, but I live with it. Actually, I don't live with it. I always say multiple sclerosis lives with me, and God love it. Like, that's the way I deal with it. I was diagnosed about 14 years ago, after years of being misdiagnosed and undiagnosed and brought into the hospital for something that they couldn't figure out where I was, and I eventually got a diagnosis of multiple sclerosis. At the time, it was very, very frightening. But me being a man of my generation, that I thought that I could bottle everything up and not speak about it and tell everybody else was fine, and that's what I done. So I used to tell people everything was fine, but on the inside I was terrified, I was frightened, but I hadn't got the ability to articulate what actually was going on for me. I didn't have the capacity in me at the time to be able to go and say, listen, I'm frightened. I'm really, really worried about this. I'm really, really worried how I'm going to provide for my family and all that kind of stuff at the time. And that led me at that stage to be very sick within myself, as in I was suffering with depression. I didn't know I was suffering with depression. I didn't even know what depression was. But I found myself becoming very withdrawn from family, from friends, from society in general, and becoming a recluse. And that went on for a number of years, until I finally just decided just to do something that I always advise anybody else to do. I opened my mouth and I spoke about actually how I was feeling. Whether I had the capacity and the language to articulate that at the time, it didn't really matter, because once I opened my mouth, I took a chance and spoke to somebody, and that led me on to speaking to somebody else, and I end up getting help for myself at the time. And that allowed me then to start not only dealing with what was going on internally, but also what was going on with multiple sclerosis at the time. So at this stage, I obviously I took a while to accept that I have it, but I accept that I have the condition. It's a lifelong neurological condition. It's basically like, it's the simple way of putting it is that if you take my brain as a motherboard and my body as a kind of circuit board, when the messages are going from my brain, say, to my hands or to my fingers, it takes a little detour. There's a circuit break somewhere, and it takes a little detour, and it takes a little bit longer to get to certain parts of my body, which means the body is actually working extra to get the signal down there, which is having an impact on pain, or maybe it's causing fatigue, or sometimes it's irritation as well. So that's the kind of layman's term of what multiple sclerosis is. There's all sorts of treatment for it, and everybody takes their own path in it. It's not a one-size-fit-all condition. So everybody, you could have a Robert and have a totally different reaction than
side effects.
Or I'd have, I was on medication for a while, and I found the medication was actually, just for me, was having an impact on my quality of life. So at the moment, and it's sometimes I do have a disagreement with my neurologist over it. I'm not on any medication for it. I kind of look after myself, not as well as I should at the moment, because I'm quite busy, but I eat well and I exercise well and all that kind of stuff. I only went public, Robert, and this is going back to the influence of being in a position of influence. I only went public when I was the mayor of South Dublin. I decided to go public on a couple of things in relation to it, and it was more to give people who are newly diagnosed a bit of hope, because when I was newly diagnosed, even though I was telling people I was fine, I didn't think I had any hope. And in that year, I ran the Dublin City Marathon, which was a huge achievement. At one stage, say 12 years ago, I was on a walking stick. I needed a walking stick to get around. I couldn't go into a shop that had a refrigerated supermarket with the refrigerated section because the cold would get into me very, very quick, and I'd find myself in bed for a couple of days. So that's where I was, going around walking stick and afraid to go into certain places. And then 10 years or so later, I was running the Dublin City Marathon, which was an absolutely fantastic achievement.
Just incredible.
But what I did do was raise awareness for people, especially newly diagnosed people, that just wherever you're feeling, just go out and speak about it. And there is help out there. You just have to tap into it. So that's the reason why I went public on it.
No, it's brilliant. And you know, I always admired you for that, looking back. You know, I wouldn't have been aware, like, you know, I worked closely with you for a number of years when I was in Dublin working in the community project. But, you know, that tells a lot about you as well yourself. You know, you never publicised that, you know, and when you did, it was for very, very positive reasons. Mark, I suppose, look, for you tapped into, like, you know, that obviously depression was part of MS, and you know that was part of you for a number of years that you struggled with that. Is anxiety something as well that possibly you've struggled with in relation to it? And you know, just in relation to both of them, or even one of them, anxiety or depression, like, how have you got support for them? How have you managed that? You know, what skills and tools maybe have you developed and used maybe today to kind of support you with that stuff? Like,
okay, well, the most basic thing I have is I have a good support network of friends and family around me. So if I need to speak to somebody, I have people I can go and speak to, and I'm not afraid to go and pick up the phone and go and speak to somebody personally if I need to. The depression at the time, that's gone back a good few years. It's not something I've suffered with since, and I'm lucky with that. To me, it was the being diagnosed with something that I didn't know anything about, and I done Dr. Google. So when I done Dr. Google, my train of thought would only let me look at the negative sides of MS. It wouldn't let me see the people that would have recovered and the people that would have lived a positive and good quality of life. My head wasn't in a fit state to do that, so I was looking at the negative kind of stuff, and my head was only going to let me look at that. As I said, I was suffering with depression. I became withdrawn. I wouldn't speak to family, friends, work colleagues, anybody. But if anybody was asking me how I was telling them I was fine, and which I wasn't at all. I went and spoke to people, and I just learned different tools and how to deal with it. And it was just more about changing my thinking around MS. And I mentioned earlier on, I don't say I have MS anymore. I say MS has me, and God love it. That's the way I kind of look at it. I wouldn't like to be MS. I wouldn't like to be MS that wanted to take over somebody's body and end up with me. Yeah, wouldn't end up with me, like, because I'm not someone that now that is allowing it to impact on me on a daily basis. It doesn't impact me on a daily basis. I actually, most days, I don't even think about it, which goes to show from somebody that was obsessing with something at one stage to somebody that doesn't think about it. Now, I might get the odd twinge, I might be tired a little bit more, or sometimes I get a pain, which wouldn't be normal, people wouldn't get, and that kind of brings it back. But I can deal with that now, and it's something that I deal with on a daily basis. And anxiety, they go hand in hand. It wasn't, and you know what, everybody feels anxious. I still get it, like even doing public speaking, I get this kind of ball of nerves in my stomach sometimes before I have to go up and speak, and it's kind of just changing my thinking around it and pushing myself through it. Like, a lot of that is not even to do with MS. A lot of that is being conditioned in an area of a social disadvantage area where you're constantly told by outsiders that you're not good enough, that your voice shouldn't be heard, and it's to push through that. It's just, for me myself, is to say, listen, I deserve my voice to be heard as much as anybody else, and what I have to say is every bit as important as anybody else. Whether you agree with me or not, it's irrelevant. But what I have to say, to me, is very important for me to say. And it's just to push myself through that.
Fantastic. Mark, I suppose, look, just for people out there that might have MS or possibly struggling with other conditions or other autoimmune diseases, or people are just struggling with maybe their mental health, like, you know, and more simpler things, like what's some advice that you might give people?
Okay, the first thing I would do on the autoimmune disease rather than the mental health would be not to do Dr. Google. I said it already. because Dr. Google will never, if your state of mind is not in a good place, Dr. Google will bring you down the dark road, and it will only allow you to focus on the worst possible outcomes. That's just the reality of it. So don't do Dr. Google. Go and speak to the societies or the organisations that are set up to help wherever it might be. So if it's MS, there's the MS Society, who I found really, really good over the years and very, very helpful. There is, if it's Parkinson, or if it's motor neuron disease, wherever it might be, just using them as an example, there is organisations set up to advocate on your behalf and speak to you. And then if you need counselling after speaking to these people will put you in touch with the right counsellors. And a lot of time there is no monetary, it doesn't cost you anything to do that. So if money is an obstacle, get in touch with them. It doesn't cost you anything. In relation to people that are struggling with mental health, the cliche that's always put out there, like it's okay not to be okay, but it's not a cliche. It is okay not to be okay. There's days I'm not okay. There's days you're not okay. Everybody has days when they're not okay. So what I would suggest, and it's back to basics, is that if you have got support networks around you, such as family, friends, work colleagues, is to rely on them, because you be the very person that would want your work colleague, your friend, your family member to rely on you if they were feeling down. And it's something that people actually appreciate when you go and speak to them. Unfortunately, not everybody has that network of family, friends, or work colleagues around them. So what I would suggest is that your first point of call, if you're suffering with or anything with mental health, is your GP. Is your GP, and then take it from there. Then and do one step at a time, and try not look at the bigger picture, but try and just take things a day at a time. And that kind of brings things into the here and now, which are a lot easier to manage than what's going to come down 5 years down the line, because your head will go off into all sorts of movie films and stories which never have any good endings.